Hi, the world's most wicked problems need innovative solutions. Join me in this show to meet leaders, pathbreakers, and visionaries who solve these problems, not just solve them, but they've solved it at scale. When you join me, you're going to listen to their lives, the problems they solved, and the fun they had doing it. Hi, welcome to the Wicked Solution Show. In this show, you will be meeting leaders who solve world's most wickedest problems in the most innovative way possible. Today on the show, you're going to meet a public policy advocate and a social innovator who is a trained physician and also happens to be a degree holder from the Harvard University on Masters in Public Administration. He is a person who's inspired by Swami Vivekananda, and at the age of 19, he started his first organization called the Swami Vivekananda Youth Movement. And through that and several other institutions that he set up, he served some of the most poorest and the most vulnerable communities, particularly the indigenous communities. Right now, he serves Government of India as the member Capacity Building Commission, and I'm really privileged and honored to welcome Dr. R. Balasubramaniam to this show. Dr. RB, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here today. And it's always a pleasure to reconnect with old friends.
As is. 30 years, huh? Our journey has been.
A little more than that.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. And thank you for what you do, and thank you for what you've done for me in terms of giving me such brilliant opportunities in terms of what one could do in public health. You really opened a plethora of things for me personally. But I wanted you to begin by sharing with my audience, what is your journey for the last 4 decades? And I know probably it's more than 4 decades. So if you can give us a glimpse of what RB is and what are his key milestones.
That's an easy and a difficult question.
Right.
Difficult chronologically for me to sequence my life.
Right.
But easy to say that I've been having fun all my life.
Mm.
And that's the best way to describe how I lived my life. I think it's easy also because I lived life on my terms. I never allowed ecosystems or terms to be dictated to me, whether it's my family, whether it's outside world, or whether it's any other situation. So starting off as a young person back in middle class Bangalore, where the only aspirations were do your engineering, do your medicine, go abroad, and that's it, life is great. And I come from a family where both my siblings are abroad, so it made sense for me to just follow their footsteps. And I think what really changed and shaped my entire last 40 years is the opportunity I got by understanding Swami Vivekananda, which itself has been a journey which is never ending. So it all started off when I wanted to do computer science, wanted to get to, that's a time when the whole world was talking of computer science. It just opened up.
And that too in Bangalore.
Yeah, and Bangalore. So I thought I deserved to be in an IIT, but IIT didn't think so. So there I was. And then I thought those days they were called RECs, not NITs like today. So I thought I'll get into REC Suratkal.
Right.
I had 99.odd% in my engineering PCM. And so I thought I'll walk into any college I wanted.
Right.
Again, fate willed otherwise. And there's only one seat that year they launched computer science.
Right.
There's only one seat that they offered, and I was waitlisted one. The guy with 100% got it.
Wow.
So very disappointed. I just thought, let me take what comes. And I took a college in Bangalore.
Right.
I would say luckily for me, I was ragged very badly the first day of college. And those days ragging was really severe because there's no anti-ragging law or anything like that. And ragging meant I didn't have the courage to go back to college the next day.
Wow.
But coming from a middle class family, you can't stay at home, nor that can you afford to go to a movie theater, so you have to plan your life around the economics of the situation.
Right.
And so on the way to the college where I was supposed to be studying in, the BMS College of Engineering, is a Ramakrishna Ashram. So lovely green campus, the gates were open, place where you could park your cycle without worrying about it getting stolen. I just went there more as a person to just spend some time. And I think that 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, and people noticed me. They thought possibly I'm there to come to pluck some fruits.
Right.
To look serious, I started sitting in their library.
Right.
And I think that changed my life. I pretty much read the complete works of Swami Vivekananda, 8 volumes those days. Now it's 9.
9. Right.
So in the next 2 months. 2 particular books, which still today are my go-to books. One is called His Call to the Nation.
Right.
And second is called To the Youth of India. They changed my life. And here I felt if I get an opportunity to lead a different life, as sort of the call given by Swami Vivekananda to bring in national resurgence, I thought I would take it. And that's coincidentally the day I decided this. The next day I come home, I had a telegram saying, join Mysore Medical College immediately.
Wow. Oh.
I never wanted to be a doctor. I never intended to be one. But like a middle class family, you always take PCMB. Because your parents always tell you have some
backup.
Backup, right? And we all come from the same ecosystem, so we all know how it operates.
The pressure of it.
So I took it and I just joined medicine. And but the single-minded pursuit of my life from then on was to live this message of Swami Vivekananda to the extent I can. It's very difficult. Every day I unpack him, I discover more about him that I'm not able to try to integrate into my life. But that's the journey, right? That's the tapasya you do to try to absorb and live that life. And started off then, that was 1984.
Right.
As a third year medical student.
But for some people listening to you, this may be about religion. Was it religion or spirituality?
No, I think there were two statements, and this is a great question. In fact, I think it's time I clarify to the world, because the moment everybody says Vivekananda, people misunderstand him. I think
a man in an orange robe, and
one of the greatest nationalists, one of the most humane, compassionate individuals I've read about. He was his intellect was gigantic as much as his compassion for society.
Right.
And two statements particularly changed my life. One statement was, I call every young man a traitor who, having been educated at people's expense, pays not the least heed to them. So this was a call for public action for people, and I had hardly spent anything in my entire education. So I thought I owe it to society, to Indian society.
Right.
And the second statement, more importantly, for a young 17-year-old, I think at 17 all of us are unspoken communists.
Right.
We believe that we can change the world,
yes,
right? And we wave a magic wand, it will change it. And this statement of Swamiji changed my life. He said, I do not believe in a God or religion that cannot wipe away the widow's tears or bring a piece of bread to the orphan's mouth. To me, I thought this is the God or religion I have to understand, that which can have this power of social change.
Right.
And so in a true sense, I think he set the foundation for spirituality and a spiritual pursuit through the action that you can do in your social sphere.
Which is the Karma Yoga, as you call it.
Exactly. The philosophy of what I do today in my life.
Right. Wow.
So that was when I started the journey and got inspired by him. And then life has been a one continuum. Then I went into this tribal area thinking that I'll be useful, needed there. Every day was a discovery when I realized that medicine is the last thing people need. They're more worried about the next meal. And then I thought, okay, maybe I should provide them the meal. And then I thought, how long can I keep doing this? I must possibly give them education. So one knee-jerk response led to the other.
And then you started the school.
And then we started a college. And then we started livelihood centers. And so it was never ending.
Right.
But then maybe 15, 20 years into the journey, I had to ask myself some hard questions. What am I doing? Am I even creating impact? Is it worth investing my life on something where I can't see change in a permanent or at least semi-permanent, meaningful way? And then that's when it hit me that it is not about poverty, it's about poverty created by the state. And I'm saying this with a lot of responsibility. The state makes laws in the spirit of harmonizing it for the whole nation or homogenizing a law for the entire country and never consults stakeholders. And that's why what I'm doing today is just great work for me. And the stakeholders are the last in the consultation process. And these indigenous communities were never consulted in the forests were declared national parks and large dams were built around their houses. And so I realized that they were forced to lead a life that they were leading today only because of state interventions in the name of development. And was that development is a question I had. And I thought I don't have an answer. So to cut a long story short, first I thought, okay, doctor is not useful, do public health. So I went into public health and I thought, no, it's about systems and management. And people like you, we met and we thought management can find solutions. I actually believed it.
We create problems. We don't create solutions.
I wouldn't agree. I think we do find a lot of solution frameworks emerging, and that's a beauty of, that's what, even when I started my life, I thought management is for corporate world. So I'm completely convinced that's the wrong view to have. I think management is a useful tool, but that's not a panacea. We'll draw a line somewhere. And what I learned then was I need to understand management better. So I did my MPhil and health systems management. I thought that will solve problems. Then I got into saying, no, it's policy. The culprit is policy. Then I went to Harvard, did my policy degree, and then I realized it's not the policy, it's the policy maker who matters.
So governance came in there.
Yes. So from policy maker and persons who set the tone for governance. So I thought leadership matters. So I did my fellowship in leadership, tried going deep into leadership, understanding what works for a public leader. How does he think? How does he act? How does he even understand the stakeholding concept? So the journey has been fascinating in terms of trying to respond to what I felt are solution frameworks at that point of time. Looking back, I don't regret.
Right.
But looking ahead, I do feel that the scale at which we need to solve problems, you need the convening power at that scale.
Right.
And this experience of the last 4 decades have been valuable for me to the current job that I do.
Right.
So the learnings I've had, the life of the communities, the reflections I brought out in my books, which serves as my own textbook today.
Right.
And it's been a great journey. And so for me, like I said, it's fun.
Right.
So whether it's getting beaten up or arrested or all that, I see it as one part of the fun I've had.
Wow. Wow. What you said made me think about a statement somebody made. I don't remember. It was a bureaucrat for sure. And her statement was that there are plans for the rich people and there are schemes for the poor. Right. And I think displacing indigenous communities, taking over their land and then doing many things which are required, but you still didn't give up. You began with health, public health, and went around the entire spectrum of policy right up to governance. And I know that you combined all of them at some level. So one of the things I wanted to talk to you today about is, what is that biggest problem which still bothers you, which you still want to chip at? Like the way Swami Vivekananda is the opportunity for you to learn like a pathway that you walk. What is that one problem which keeps you awake and you say, I got to solve this, I got to solve this?
I've been very disturbed by this narrative of sustainable development, to be very honest. I do think the economic paradigm in which the world operates, that's just a slogan. It is never going to be sustainable. Because we have built a model of profit maximization and then we want sustainability. It's fundamentally flawed. So the last 7-8 years of my life, maybe the part of life which you are not yet figured out of mine, is a few of us around the world now are concerned and saying, can we bring in a new economic paradigm? And that's what one of the courses I teach at Cornell is also based on that. Saying challenging this economic narrative of growth and development and refocusing our efforts on building human and social capital that will have economic consequences. And so how do you create a model which looks at benefit optimization and not profit maximization?
Right.
It looks so simple when I say it. It's so staring at our face, but it requires enormous change in behaviors at the individual level, change in behaviors at the collective level, community, at the level of the state and policy that it makes, and at the level of corporate India. You can still make profit. So I'm not, one phase of my life was, I saw myself as somebody who has answers to all the problems, right? Everybody is screwed up. I'm the only fellow who's got solutions. I went through that phase too. I thought NGOs can solve the world's problems.
Right.
It was a very myopic way of looking at myself and at the world outside. It also reflected my inexperience in the way things operate. Today, I'm a firm believer that you cannot solve what you rightly call wicked problems by that sense of behavior where you say, I'm the king who can solve these problems. We need synergistic partnerships. Partnerships between major players in the ecosystem, the state as a principal partner, citizens as responsible participants in this game, civil society and private sector.
Right.
I would also add media and academic sector, which in our country has failed us, but I would still feel it's an important part of the game.
Right.
And recognizing that each of us have strengths, which we don't have. So when you partner, you bring your strengths to the table, you work with their strengths, and only together can we bring this paradigm shift I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
And where everybody is a stakeholder. Because if we don't see stakeholding now, the planet is going to disappear.
Right.
And what really gives me hope is the call for the life economy, which the Indian Prime Minister made.
Right.
And in the G20 declaration, where it is clearly mentioned that the whole world, 85% of the GDP of the world is accepted. And we need to have to look for alternate models. We need to find solutions for the SDGs the way we're describing them today. We need to move the life way. And therefore, for me, a life economy, if I can call it that, is waiting to happen. It's just that we have to build enough pressure on the system to make it happen. So that's what really makes me sleepless. Say, we have to solve it.
We have to solve it.
Otherwise, the next generation will not have anything left to be solved because generation itself will not be there.
Right. Let me pick 2-3 things that you said. One is around the profit maximization as an economic model, which to me goes right up to the farmer with whom you are talking about productivity of the crop, not about regenerative agriculture that was always practiced, right? So that impact of it is fairly huge. And you're saying there is double standards here. You say sustainable development, but then you practice maximization. I want to go one step further than that. When we talk about profit maximization, where is the origin of this? Right? Why is there so much energy around the profit maximization Is the problem the way what we have defined success is? Like the way Swami Vivekananda saw what was success is really wiping out the tear and making that bread available. He didn't say how much money can I make out of them while I do that, right? So do you think the real problem lies in the way the world defines success? Because I want to connect this to youth in the sense, what will success be as we move forward?
Two powerful lessons I learned, actually, which I've written about in my books also. Are lessons I learned from indigenous tribal communities. The sad part is we don't see traditional wisdom as wisdom. We don't see community knowledge as knowledge. We only see knowledge coming from universities, legitimized by degrees as science, right? Yeah. So this experience was something which really changed the way I look at life. I remember Kempaya was the name of the chieftain. He was very close to me and he used to come every evening, sit at my doorstep and we would laugh and talk.
Which Hadi was he from?
He was from Kempanahadi.
Kempanahadi, okay.
And so he was one of those people who was really, he was, I would call a mentor, friend, in his own peculiar way, a guru also in development. So we had a situation where they would distribute, the way the tribals operate their agriculture, is the chieftain would give you a seed and you can only sow that seed. If he doesn't give you a seed, you don't do agriculture that year.
Wow.
So I was sitting and watching him distribute seeds. He gave somebody ragi, he gave somebody horse gram, somebody else he gave some other pulses, somebody said no seeds for you. And the little economics I knew, I said, how can you let land lie fallow? Right. How stupid can you be? You can't let 5-6 acres of land just be there. Nothing is there.
That's maximization.
That's maximization, right? And so that's all that I know comes from these communities.
Right.
And so he said, wait and watch. He didn't say anything at that time. Then come back 6 months later. And we used to have this chavdis, a central small house-like structure where the community event would take place. So 6 months later I went. And he distributed the grades that came. So I have 10 quintals of ragi. You would say only 3 people in your house, 3 quintals are enough and keep 7 here. Somebody else had...
So they pool all the production.
And then he would equitably distribute it.
Right.
And the traditional systems permitted him to have the convening power to do that. And finally, he would take away 5 bags of ragi and a little bit of everything and keep it in his house. And again, the economic model that I subscribed to meant, this guy is corrupt. He's hoarding away stuff that belongs to somebody else.
Somebody else, who produced by somebody else.
Exactly. Right? And so he immediately looked at me and said, I know what you think. Because we are close enough and emotionally also very close. So he said, I'm not storing it for me.
Right.
Tomorrow, if there's somebody
in the village,
there's an emergency, there's a crisis, there's a widow, there's a family which needs my help, we can't do agriculture, they need it. Or I have a community event like a jatre, we'll use it for
that. It's a bank literally.
It's a little grain bank which he controlled.
Right.
And not only that, he also made sure some of it was kept under his, where his kitchen was. Kitchen the same room but the earth. The warmth kept the fungus away and the mold away, which means that becomes seed material for the next season.
For millet, that's very crucial.
And it's very important. So you don't depend on a Monsanto for cropping, you depend on yourself and your practices.
Right.
But the story doesn't end here. I still told him, but then land was fallow. But that fellow got produce. He said he worked in somebody else's land.
Right.
Don't think that labor is not important. So he had a value for labor. But more importantly, he told me, what you see is just the crop and the agriculture. What you don't see is a fallow land is a whole diverse ecosystem by itself. The weeds are important to us. The insects are important to us. And when I leave the land fallow this year, I'm allowing the soil to regenerate. Next year, I'll do something. So when he distributes seeds, he knows this year I gave you ragi, so next year I will not give you ragi. So he knew crop rotation. So this is the perfect example of benefit optimization. This was the perfect example of deciding the value that you need to get or the benefits you need to get for the value you bring to the table. I brought value of labor, so I get benefit. You brought the value of land, you get benefit. We all as a community brought the value of leaving land fallow, so society gets benefit. So this is the powerful change and paradigm that the society needs to capture. Unfortunately for him, success was in preserving this. It is not in... he lived benefit optimization. He never lived in profit maximization. So otherwise, we think that, 1 acre of land, you need to have 20 quintals of ragi. I was in that model. I would give them ragi
hockey
seeds.
stick model,
And I myself propagated it. I would give them ragi seeds and say, these are best seeds, HR11 from Mandya, and so you should grow, you will get 20 quintals of ragi. He even asked me, what will I do with 20 quintals? You're so simple. He said, what will I do? I only need 4 quintals for my life. I don't want 16. Why are you forcing me to take 16? And for them, agriculture meant take a bamboo stick, make a hole in the ground, drop a ragi seed. But then I taught them, no, that's not agriculture. Profit maximization means
plowing.
Get a tractor, cultivate. The tragedy is Most of India has lost that. And we are this blind model. Because today, we are imitating the Western model. I would say Western because that's where this came in from a long, big way, where we celebrate the primacy of money and profits. You start a startup.
Right.
I'll put your name on the papers. Only now India is recognizing social enterprises and social concerns as a legitimate concern. Before that, we were seen as outcasts. We were seen as anti-establishment. We were seen as people who are fools, who don't know what they're doing for their lives. Today, we know that there is an important story behind it, which matters. It could be solutions for the earth.
Right.
And I think it's a long journey, but to me, in a simple way, success is not all that. I tell myself every morning a very simple storyline. I keep telling people I know, there are only two ways you should measure your life. First is, am I happy doing what I'm doing? Second is, am I keeping people around me happy?
Right.
If I've not had an answer yes to both, then maybe I'm not successful.
Right. And if I may add an angle to it, I know you don't mean the hedonistic happiness. It's truly being happy inside.
The spiritual depth of happiness is
happiness,
good.
right.
The real santusht that India describes it as.
Right. Abhi, I want to go push you a little bit deeper there because, I was talking to one of your colleagues, Meena, and very unusually for a young kid, young professional, I wouldn't call her a kid, she said something very interesting to me. She said, look, when I graduated, I was like all my colleagues, I wanted to get a good paying job and, have a good life. But then I realized that is too empty and I need to do something more important. These are rare people and you are one of them and you practiced it, but you pushed the envelope every time and learned and said, okay, this is not going to work, this is going to work. So if you had a young person in this chair who is struggling with the images of success, right, which is about money, car, big house, partying, whatever else. I mean, I'm not dissing them, but I'm saying that's the image, but then you don't have the public service image, which is as interesting. So how would you reduce, let's say, their learning time of what Balu took 40, 50 years much more rapidly? What would be the three pieces of advice you will give them?
First, I would say, believe in yourself. Most young people are lost. And that's why they imitate. Because they don't have a cause or a purpose which they can give their life.
But isn't that what all old people tell young people? You're lost.
No, I think they're wrong. Old people have not lived it. So the difference when I say it is I lived it.
Right.
And I'm not immodest about it, but I can say it because it pays off. That's what I'm trying to communicate.
Right.
Like, what have I not got in society today? I've got love of my friends and colleagues. My family, which initially thought I'm an idiot, appreciate what I'm doing, and I've got the greatest kind of network that you could ever imagine to have. What have I not got? So whatever money could have got is what I also have. But it's not the money that I could have made. It's with the goodwill that you generate by leading a life which is different. So have the courage to lead a different life, but believe in that. Most of us are always suspicious because the way we are brought up, we're always told, don't do that, don't do this, you can't do this, you climb up a tree. I remember my son one day told me, why haven't you told me, he fell down from a tree in Sargur and he came to me and he was upset with me and said, you should have told me not to climb the tree. I had a simple answer. If I had told you that, you wouldn't know what it is to fall down.
Right.
It's as simple as that.
Right.
But we don't tell our young people, it's okay to fall down. We always don't want them to fall down, and so we're so prescriptive about them as parents, as a senior generation, that we don't even allow them to experiment. So I think the joy of success lies in the experimentation, the courage of experimentation. Whereas imitating somebody else, what joy can you have? I can imitate a person who's making money, follow his path, earn a degree, and just do what he did, and I also get money. That's a known formula. That's a standard operating procedure for making money.
Right.
But can you get the joy that you can get by leading life differently and still getting what you want?
Right.
So I think I would say first is conviction in what you believe in and
Believe in
stand
yourself,
for. That,
right.
and that conviction should also give you the courage to say, I believe in myself and I can achieve it.
Right.
I would simply say the best advice I got is from Vivekananda. He said, all you need are 3 P's. And that's what I kept it as my life's mantra. He said, first is patience. He said, you need enormous patience. In a country like India, you can't bring social change overnight. I was very impatient. I thought tomorrow morning I'll change everything. I feel frustrated. Even today, 40 years down the line, despite believing in all this, I always believe that, I have these great ideas and I want the state to implement it.
This needs to be done.
And it can produce a miraculous change for the country. So there is a restlessness there. But you got to be patient. Second is you got to have purity.
Right.
Purity of thought, word and deed, and purity of everything that you believe in. It's not a natak, it's not something that you do things for.
Right.
And the last is you got to persevere. These things don't happen. At 22, Meena can feel she can change the world, but at 72, will she still believe it? That is perseverance.
Right.
So purity, patience, perseverance, I think, is a magic formula.
I also found one very interesting thing I wanted to share with you, which is, does everything that we can count, does it count? Right?
Beautiful.
And that which we can't count probably is the most invaluable, right? Whether it's relationships or the respect that you get, those are things which really stay with you, right? In terms of just pushing that one level up. One of the things I struggle with not just youngsters, but even people who are middle-aged or beyond, changing the access from their benefits and their own self and their family and their community to a much more humane, like the way what Vivekananda defined it, as for every human being. How does that shift happen? Is it more accidental, or can there be a path towards, moving the access from you to others?
I think there's a very practical formula Swami Vivekananda gives in all his teaching. I'm just extracting it from different places,
Right.
not in one place. He says, it's okay to be selfish. For a man who said selfishness is sin,
Right.
I was appalled. I said, what is this man talking?
Right.
And then if you read the next statement, in today's world we quote statements in isolation. But the next statement of his is, you have to begin with yourself. You said you have to acquire the best you can, best knowledge. You lead a proper life. He says you can't teach the Bhagavad Gita on an empty stomach. So you your stomach should be filled up. So he says it's okay to start with yourself, but get the best for yourself, including the best thoughts, the best pure notions of what you should live for. Once that is done, then what else?
Right.
Most of us stop at that level.
And the journey becomes about accumulation.
It's sort of a constant expansion. Life is about expansion. So then you talk about my family. Okay, my parents have to lead a good life. My siblings must be okay. My wife and children should be okay. He said, okay, expand that circle. So you already expanded from an individual to one small circle. Then he said, okay, you've done that, then what? So he says it's a constant expansion of circles. Next you say, okay, my neighbors. In our country, unfortunately, we stop at saying my caste. But can you expand it and say my village,
Right.
my town, my city? And then Swamiji doesn't stop there. He says my country. But he says the real magic of this thinking is this my universe,
world.
my
Right.
Jagat. And that's where the G20 slogan, one earth, one family, one future, is so embedded in the Vivekananda thinking.
Right.
Where it's not just expanding your physical actions to incorporating the whole world, but also the very ideation that I am responsible for the whole world. If a child in Zimbabwe is dying of starvation, or if there's a spread of COVID in some small village in Africa, I'm responsible for it. So whether we send vaccines to that nation, or we send recently for Turkey, we were the first, our disaster relief agencies are the first to go there, and to a nation which keeps criticizing us. We didn't care. We said our Indian thought ethos is to serve and this expansion.
Right.
So for me, that is a very magical path. You start with yourself. It's okay to be selfish, but how long can you be? Maybe a year or two, you acquired your knowledge, you acquired a degree, your family, okay, then keep expanding it.
Right.
So it's concentric circles expanding all the time. So life's purpose is to keep stepping into the next circle all the time. And people ask me, how do you do it? You're a doctor, you gave up everything, went there. I think that's again a mistaken notion. Again, for me, here is what Vivekananda's magic comes in. He says, there's always the first level of service. He says it's physical service. Care for the body. You're walking along the path, somebody is not well, somebody is sick, somebody is an orphan child. You just take care of the sharirik seva. Then he says, after some time, you feel restless again.
Right.
Then he says, bodhik seva. How do I make him intelligent enough, empowered enough, knowledgeable enough to take care of himself, give him the benefit of being a responsible citizen, restoring dignity and development for him. And then after some time it stops. And then he says, go to the highest level of service, highest expression says Adhyatmik Seva. And for a long I struggled with it, thinking that I'm not capable of this, it's not for me. Then it took me a real deep introspection to understand it's not about me, it's not about spiritual service that I should be doing to others. That's a mistaken idea I had of Vivekananda. Today my appreciation of him is, you do the first two seriously and sincerely, with no expectation of a return in the spirit of Karma Yoga. The third will happen to you. It's not about you doing it to others. You evolve spiritually.
Right.
And what he says, with the mission he gave to the Ramakrishna mission, is Atmano Mokshartham Jagat Hitayacha. So he said it's not about sitting in the Himalayas and meditating. India doesn't need that. India needs Jagat Hita. And as you do Jagat Hita without any attachment to the fruits of your action, without any hunger for name or fame or visibility, your Atma evolves.
Right.
Moksha happens. To me, that is the magic formula for everybody.
Right. Wow. Arbi, you've kind of, in your pursuit from science to academics to civil society, now to government, you've seen the whole spectrum of types of stakeholders, all of them wanting the same thing many times. But I think in today's world, we are struggling with two things, particularly when you mention those multiple actors, right? Government, civil society, private sector, media. I think the government and civil society, there are tensions. And you've been on both sides in terms of your work. You started with civil society, been with the government, and you've always been an advisor to the government. Many occasions I've seen you advising senior IAS officers on what to be done or not to be done. So what would your one advice be to a government official who works with the NGOs or civil society, and what would be the vice versa, right, for a civil society person about government?
I would give the same advice to both, having been in both the places. First, don't live under the pretension you can solve all problems of the world. We can't. Our desire to solve might be intense,
right,
but we should have the humility to accept that I don't have all the solutions. So it's okay to live in self-doubt. It's not about being diffident. It's about exploring. The willingness to accept your vulnerability, your inability to provide solutions to all the problems that exist. Then you look for partners. That's the reality of existence.
Right.
And also be conscious that don't fall into the trap of stereotyping. I have done that. I have stereotyped the state as mediocre, inefficient, useless. And the last 2 years, I can say the constraints with which our state operates is enormous. And for the amount of good they're doing for the constraints they're under, it's remarkable.
Yeah.
So we are actually capturing those powerful stories now for the whole world to understand. It's not just civil society. So have the decency and humility to accept that you have a fellow traveler with you in government or vice versa, and not that you're the only traveler in this train. I think the moment you get that, you start exploring partnerships. You start exploring how do we solve it together. I think co-generated solutions is the way to go. The arrogance of I can solve it, I think it's time for us to let it go. It's nice, you can get your name in the newspapers, but that joy lives very short.
Right.
But the real unseen work of building relationships and partnerships. And I have also seen the state is not, it's not really anti-NGO or anything like that. It is just that the culture among some of the non-profits has always been they reaffirm their existence by taking an anti-establishment stand always.
Right.
If you're truly pro-people, you're not anti-anything.
Right.
You're only pro-people. And the state is pro-people by definition. If it's not functioning in its role, question the state.
Right.
It's our responsibility as citizens to question the state. But don't start off with a value perception that they are there only to be anti-people. And that's the disturbing trend that we saw a few years ago. And now we need to understand that together we can make it shorter because we don't have all the time in the world anymore.
Right.
We need to produce results. And togetherness is much more valuable. So I now would say for both, learn to partner. And partnership is not easy. Partnership can happen only, I always call it the 7 R's, only when the 7 R's exist and you have to explore for them. The first is you got to understand that each of us bring different kinds of resources.
Right.
Have the respect. The first R is the respect for the resources we bring. Like Swasti brings its own resource to the table and the state brings its own resources. You can't scale up the way state does. Like we run a tribal school. We run one Sainik school. The state runs Sainik schools across the country. Right? And if I were to replicate that, I'll fail. I can do a damn good job of one school, but I can't be arrogant to say that, you know what, my school is the best in the world. Others are also doing. If you give me 70,000 schools, I'll also fail.
Right.
So we got to be sensitive to that. So respect the resources we bring to the table and define your roles. As civil society, I'm very powerful at the grassroots. At the micro level. As a state, I'm very powerful at the macro level. I can take your ideation to the macro level.
Right.
And that's what I'm doing today. I'm only taking my micro experiences to a macro space.
Right.
So can you define roles? Can you also clearly define your responsibilities? That's why we get confused. That's where the tensions come. When you don't define roles and responsibilities, you think you're doing my job, I think you're...
We start competing with each other.
We start competing.
Right.
And so competition doesn't create collaboration, it creates confrontation. Because we are stereotyping the other all the time.
Right.
And then you also understand there are risks in any partnership.
Right.
I risked a lot when I partnered with the state. I risked a lot joining the government today. A lot of my NGO friends call me, I sold myself. Now that's not true. I found a larger opportunity to scale up very powerful ideas which the government is now sincerely wanting to do.
And government is the largest and the last
player
provider.
In the space of development.
Yeah.
Then there are also rewards of partnership. I think NGOs also suffer from the incurable disease of saying that I did it myself.
Right.
So we allow that even we take state support and then we say I did it. Which is unfair.
Right.
I know a lot of midday meal programs where they say I did it, but they take all the money from the government.
Right.
Why not we share credit?
Right.
We just say we did it together.
Right.
And have a mechanism to review partnerships. So I always say don't accept things at face value. There will be one-off experience of somebody anecdotally say some NGO is corrupt or some official is corrupt. Don't generalize.
Right.
Review it constantly
Right.
and then rebuild the partnership the way it should be.
And there'll be failures.
There will be failures. Like where don't we fail? You and I have done so many experiments and innovations in social sector.
Right.
I think the failures is not a failure. Failures is what enriched our success.
So let me try to recap. You mentioned respect, resources, roles, responsibilities,
Risks,
and
rewards,
and review. Wow. While we do all of this, do you think we are in a inflection point of civil society and government working together? Is it going to change completely? For example, you are playing a very leading role in the social stock exchange. Is this the way we are going to be moving forward? Will this strengthen the best of the civil society and government, or do you think it's all going to be very, very difficult times ahead?
I would draw my strength and hope from two things.
Right.
Just to answer your question, very specifically for your question. The first thing is we live in a moment of history where the state is decisively and consciously altered the role of itself.
Right.
Now, let me explain what I mean by that. See, 1947, when we got our freedom, right, we had a state which had to provide, because we were a poor nation, less than 2% of GDP. Right, from making bread to running an airport, the state had no choice but to provide. Whatever name you call that mechanism, we had to take care of our citizens. 50 million of them had to be fed and taken care.
And basic
needs have to be provided. You have to build your schools and colleges as much as you have to provide food. I still remember standing in line in the ration shop buying my kerosene and palm oil and stuff like that. And that was part of the state. If the state hadn't provided, maybe my family wouldn't have had cooking oil.
Right.
That's the reality of the situation that day.
Or sugar.
Right? Exactly. Though sugar would be rationed so consciously by your mom till the next supply came from the ration shop, we wouldn't get.
Yeah. Otherwise, let's use a little bit of jaggery mixed with it. Right?
And sometimes if the sugar comes early, she would make kesari bath so that the sugar gets last month gets exhausted.
Right.
So we've had all those lives.
Right.
But 90s, the state shifted its colors. It said, I'm going to privatize, I'm going to globalize, I'm going to create spaces and deregulate. See, for a state which thrived on regulation, I keep giving this example to a lot of my friends and say, when I graduated as a doctor, I came home, my father was thrilled. Like any father would be first in the family becoming a doctor. But after the initial honeymoon period settled down, he said, I'm happy because now we can apply for a telephone and get it in 6 months. Because there's a scheme called OIT special.
Right? 15,000 rupees and you get it.
No, but you're a doctor, you get it in 6 months without the extra deposit. That was what the special was.
Dang, I had to pay 15,000.
Yeah. Otherwise, you waited 10 years, right? And I know he waited for his Bajaj scooter 10 years or 11 years.
Right.
Today, and 90s changed that. Whether it's a good model, bad model, it's history. But what it did was it altered the behavior of the state. State had to learn to deregulate now. From telling you can't make that extra scooter or produce that extra bag of cement, we have to say make it. But look at the opportunity today. Today, the Prime Minister talks of Jan Bhagidari. Sometimes I feel we as citizens are losing an opportunity because in the book I the Citizen, I write about citizen engagement. But I would like to rewrite the book today because I don't think the citizens are prepared for this concept. Now imagine a state, by definition, is the largest proponent of institutionalized violence. That's how the state operates. In policy class, that's the first thing we tell our students. You need it, to prevent anarchy, you need it to, but the price you pay for law and order and for comfort is also that you're surrendering your freedom completely to the state.
Right.
But the state is today telling us, listen, I'm not even talking of citizen-led or citizen-centric development, which is what I've advocated for long. Today the state is telling, partner with me. And by partnership, it's actually saying I'm surrendering my agency and control. I want to reduce asymmetry of information and power and want you to together walk the path of building a great India. Let be part of the team India which can build the new India. Now that's an invitation we shouldn't let go. We should capitalize the true spirit of partnership that I explained before, learn how to be a good partner, to share the agency and control responsibly. Many times we're irresponsible in that. We want control, but we don't want agency for equitable distribution. So we're all very comfortable with only partial differential definitions. So if we can do that, so to me, this is an opportunity for civil society. Instead of getting locked up in their boxes and say that, I have solutions and I've got, everybody else is bad, I'm the only one good. Say that today is an opportunity for us to co-generate solutions, co-define the problem. It's not even saying partnership begins with that. Co-defining the problem, co-experimenting with a solution, finding out a model that works for the context in which we operate and then deploying it. finding the resources together. It's not just that state brings a particular resource. So the social stock exchange, from that context, most countries have failed, by the way.
Yeah, I know. There's very few.
Nobody succeeded. It's not truly exchange anywhere.
Including Singapore.
Yeah, including Singapore. Including only a place where some trading is happening is Canada. London Stock Exchange failed. The US different models have been tried. My research the last decade has been in looking at why they failed. But I think India is a beautiful concept because in Singapore it was sponsored with the Rockefeller Foundation.
Right.
But in India it's different. India, the government initiated it. The government very clearly said, in the 2019 budget speech, the finance minister, she said that here is an opportunity for creating one more pipeline of finances. A pipeline to me which is going to become consistent and continuous for the social sector to operate. It doesn't displace philanthropy. It doesn't displace granting aids or government support or multilateral support. It creates one more opportunity. Why is it important? If we really believe in ensuring sustainable development, UNDP's estimates are India would need $1 trillion a year.
Correct. Yeah.
We don't have. We are around 440 billion, all put together. But there is money in India today. There are HNIs which are worth much more. People who want to give. There's a restlessness in the younger generation which says, I want to be part of a state that produces equity as its philosophy. How do you tap into it? So to me, social stock exchange, it's a very infantile organization right now.
Nascent.
It's got its teething troubles. It's got a lot of it, and that's why it's a challenge. Many times I feel frustrated. I'm not doing enough because there's so much to be done. But I think it's an idea that has come because if it's seen in the context of Janbhagidari, the Prime Minister talks about, where we also share the agency and control to mobilize the resources from the markets. But more importantly to me, you are also bringing yourself under the scrutiny of markets. You're also shifting the narrative of development to markets. It's not just state has to take care of development or civil society. All of us share it.
And plus the disengaged citizen gets engaged.
So we're democratizing. Now look at the financial space. What mutual funds did to India, a nation which had 36% of its GDP in savings.
Right.
Today, we are one of the largest nations investing on mutual funds. There are 7.5 crore individualized demat accounts in NSE alone. Forget BSE. BSE is much smaller, but NSE alone. That means there are small-time Tier 2, Tier 3 cities and villages who are now investing in the market.
Right.
If you can tap into that population of people, if a small villager in rural Karnataka can say, I want to give 1,000 rupees to take care of a tribal child in Meghalaya, we have tapped into a resource which was not available earlier.
Right.
So I think the social stock exchange provides an institutional mechanism.
Right.
And also the sector needs regulation for different kind, not the state regulation, but market regulation. We have to hold ourselves accountable. We are all part of civil society. But we are just we think we are accountable selectively to our donors or to a few community people we work with. But we have to be universally accountable.
Right.
An institutional framework is what an exchange can bring. And so an oversight of a regulator, though may not be the best option now, but that's a workable option. So we should use it.
Yeah. No, and I think with probably the highest savings rate in the world and a very giving economy, was not really dependent on whether you were rich or poor, right?
We can give more, that is different, but still.
You should give more, I agree. But I think, social stock exchange, fingers crossed, I think can be potential, like the way India was criticized that we can never get Aadhaar right. And we did, right?
And we are telling the world how to do it.
How to do it.
Digital payments is another example.
Or the elections, which is a wonderful case of how the state machinery galvanizes and delivers at scale, right? And I'm hopeful that the social stock exchange will be similar. I want to shift gear a little bit. I'm going to ask you some rapid fire questions, right?
Difficult ones.
I want really short answers, okay? And top of mind. What's the worst advice you got in your life?
Wow. And it's a rapid fire question and you need a detailed explanation. It's just that,
Just give us the advice so we know it's worst.
I would call it the best advice in a way, but I wouldn't call it the worst advice. So it's a very, but it's described it in a very nice. So Justice Veman Venkatachalaya, my guide and mentor and guru, he told me there are three kinds of people in this world. One who thinks he has to give advice and gives advice. The second is one who takes them. And the third is one who completely discards it. He had told me you better be in the third category. So in a sense I lived that for long. I do live that even now, but I think that advice is incomplete because there's a lot of good advice that comes from experience. So it's not a one-line answer, but I have to give this whole episode.
Right.
So I believe that if you have the humility to explore and take an advice, test it out, experiment. If it doesn't work, throw it out.
But maybe there was a twist to his advice, because I think what he meant by the third was itself an advice, right? So he probably meant look at all three and use your
Judgment to decide what you want at what point of time.
So what is the one thing you are chastised regularly by Bindu, your wife?
She always tells me that, it's something, she keeps me grounded. So whenever she sees me elevating from the ground, she pulls me down. And she keeps reminding me that true spirit of equality and partnership, whether it's gender or anything else, is a lived experience, not a stated slogan. She reminds me of it regularly.
Wow. And what's the one thing you learned from your son when he was very young? Not now, but when he was very, very young. What did you learn from him?
It was something fascinating. And that's when I learned that, I was actually driving to Bangalore. And he was on 3 or 4 years old. I don't remember the exact age. He was sitting beside me that time in the car, and we stopped at a signal light. And I didn't realize how much observation people do and children do. And there was a woman who came with a baby begging. And I gave her 10 rupees those days. I would always chastise such people and tell them that you hired this baby. Because that just then Times of India had brought out an article about these women go to the slums and hire babies and give them antihistaminic medication, they sleep all. That's why you find always this baby sleeping.
Right.
And he looked at me and said, why did you give money this time? I know why you gave money this time. I said, why? Because I am in the car, you wanted me to think charity is good. So why do you want to behave for my sake? Why don't you be the same all the time? So that really hit me, and I said, I can't have two faces of my life. I should live what I speak and just speak what I live. So in a sense, that was the best advice I've had till now.
Wow.
A child unknowingly gave me possibly life's best advice to
Be yourself, right?
And he lives that life. So he's very comfortable with
Right.
that.
And you let him do that.
I enjoy him, allow him to do that, and I envy him that he has the freedom to do that.
Right. What's that one activity which brings peace, always?
My daily meditation.
Okay. Tell us a little bit more.
That's something I prize the most. I now cannot live without it, and just being with your thoughts, dissociating yourself completely from your thoughts, and just not having the existence of the feeling of I itself is so valuable and precious that I would possibly trade that for anything else in my life.
All right. If you had to switch jobs with somebody, who would that somebody be?
That's a very difficult question because that somebody is dead and gone.
Okay. Let's assume they are alive.
So
Who would
Swami
they be?
Sureshanji was a person who had a deep impact on my life, who actually communicated by his life real Advaitic existence, is embracing oneness with everything that you see and be. He could live that. And I can only describe that, but I can never live that. So if I could shift jobs, change jobs and say, give me your life, I would trade that for anything.
He lived Ishavasya in that sense.
He lived it. He lived the real Advaita that you can see.
Right.
Really is, he was a great guide for me.
And what's the one thing which gets on your nerve? Irritates you,
This is a question you should ask Meena, though she's just new to my team. Mediocrity. I feel that when people can excel, they don't recognize the inner power of excelling, and they are content with mediocrity, and that pisses me off. I said, how can you live with this desire not to strive for excellence when you're capable? If you're an idiot, absolutely incapable, I can justify that and say you can't do anything about it. But
nobody is.
Everybody is capable. Right? The power and potential that you are inside you, you fail to recognize it. And I keep giving this example to my colleague. You stand in front of a mirror and you're crying that you can't see your image. And you think people like you are mentoring you, but the real effort you should do is just wipe the dust and see the real true yourself, and then you are the answer for all the problems. But when I see that desire not to wipe, but somebody else should come and wipe and tell me that irritates me.
Wonderful. I'm going to close with one last question for you.
None of them have been one-line answers, I know.
I didn't expect it because I think, I knew they were deep. And I also would like to ask you, if I had another person in front of me who I should talk to and learn the way I learned in this conversation, and the audience too, who would that one person you would recommend I should put in this chair?
There are a lot of people. I know very faithfully follow those unseen, unheard heroes that get the Padma Shri awards every year. It's fascinating.
Right.
Their life journeys from Assam to Karnataka. people like Appaji Sahib in Bangalore, who sold oranges, kept 10% of its revenues, not profits, for building a school. And today, at 80, finally built the school.
Right.
And these are the people who are the real spirit behind India. And so I would say I have tens of them.
Right.
So like people like them or people like Kempaya and those Yajamanas who are really a towering presence of sanity and wisdom in their communities, but unfortunately they're not there to look up to today.
Right.
And these are the kind of people I would love to listen and watch your show and learn from.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Harbi, such a pleasure. I will have to do a namaste and a handshake. Wonderful talking to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being in the show and not only educating me, but also the audience.
No, I think it is a pleasure because when we participate in such shows, it truly gives you the opportunity to relook at yourself. And so the questions were brilliant and helped me to revisit and reevaluate my own thinking. Thank you for that.
Thank you for reconnecting. It was great talking to Dr. R. Balasubramaniam. It was an energizing conversation. Who would you want in this show next time? Write to me.